All right, welcome everyone to the Recruiter of Oz. Woo.
Woo!
So for this episode, we have a special guest. It's not just Mark and Scott talking, shooting the breeze. So we have somebody else who can talk, and it'll be great because we can hear their point of view about what this job market is and all the things that they're saying. So why don't you introduce everyone to Sean?
Sean,
Hello, everyone.
hello.
So, Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know Sean from way back, but Sean, give us the lowdown.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Scott, Mark, thanks for having me. It's great
Thanks
to be
for joining.
here. Love you guys' show. So my name's Sean. I worked with Mark for a few years back at Meta, formerly Facebook. We were on the executive search team there in recruitment. But I am in Austin. I have been in recruiting since 2015 when things were really blowing up. The recruiting scene here in Austin. I've been doing this for about 8.5 years now, and did some agency work, done some in-house work, and that brings us to present. That's where we're at now, out in the market.
Now, that's awesome. We're glad you joined us. Now, the one thing that I'm a little nervous about, though, with these episodes that we've done is Sean going to come on and debunk everything that we've said as garbage. And I'm thinking, okay, well, this could go really badly or it could go really well. I mean, we're not looking for a validation. We're looking for a perspective and that experiential point of view. So this is kind of why Mark and I decided, it's time that you stop hearing from us and you start hearing from people who are actually in the field doing everything. So I'm going to be listening today more than I'm talking, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Sean to kind of kick this conversation off.
Yeah, we want you to debunk our hot takes here.
Yes.
Yeah, that is definitely not my intention today. But I mean, I think from what I've listened to you guys and what I see the content on LinkedIn, it's all extremely relevant and super helpful in this market. So
nice.
So I guess, Sean, my first question is, what are you seeing personally? Because like we talk about what we see about the job market, but that's just through like, two pairs of jaded eyeballs. But like, what are you seeing? Someone who's fresh in the business, 8 years in the business. What are you seeing in the job market?
Like the Matrix. What do you see through the zeros and ones? It's tough out there right now. I mean, it's unprecedented, right? I think for folks like myself that have been recruiting and coming up in this industry for the last decade, this is probably our first real experience with seeing, layoffs of this magnitude or a correction in the tech market from a talent acquisition standpoint. I think there's like 250,000 plus, people out there from all of the best software companies in the industry, making the best money that you can make, all type A individuals doing really well, and they're all competing for the same jobs right now that are virtually non-existent across FANG companies, Enterprise 500 companies. You're not seeing the same traditional who's who out there onboarding, strong talent acquisition folks like ourselves. So it's unprecedented. It's been a really interesting summer. I myself, my wife and I just welcomed our second kid into the family. Thank you. 3 months in, so just out of that fourth trimester. I tried my best. Like I told Mark, earlier in the summer, I knew he was going to be traveling a lot and speaking at conferences. And I basically was like asking him, like, how do I keep my head, just sort of out of it right now? It's so easy to get really flustered and concerned and anxiety ridden, looking at kind of like the big picture of what's going on in the market right now. I just asked him, like, how do I stay out of this? And, he said, keep yourself busy. And I just started connecting with people and starting to really dig into the application process in early July.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how is that? How do you like the application process?
Well, first of all, I have never, ever in my whole life, I'm 35 years old. I don't mind saying that on the internet. I'm 35 years old, and I have never in my life applied for 10 jobs, 20 jobs, 30 jobs, 40 jobs for anything.
Really?
I think ever. No,
Wow.
I think a lot of people that find themselves in the recruiter chair are naturally people that have been told like, hey, you'd be good at this, you should try it, or like, hey, you should try sales or something like that, right? Like you're a people person. And naturally, I think those people gravitate more towards like networking with people and,
Yes.
you know, making organic relationships happen that way. And that's how they find jobs. And that's always been the case for me. And so, first of all,
Normally that
something
happens.
yeah, I'm absolutely not comfortable with my success ratio in applications right now. You know, it's really humbling out there. You know, you can go be 8.5 year veteran of the industry. You've recruited everything under the sun in software and been very good at it, by the way. And you're just getting ghosted, right? You know, out there you got, yeah. So I can absolutely talk more about kind of how that's evolved into what I'm seeing be fruitful now, as opposed to just the, you know, pray and apply approach.
Okay, this is interesting. Mark, let me plant an earworm to you then, because you and I are of the same era for the most part. We're still super relevant and super progressive in terms of our approach to the jobs, but we had the 2008 housing crisis, which ultimately ended up in a crazy amount of layoffs, and we had the 1998 to 2001 .com bubble. Now, I'm going to ask you just really quickly as an aside to compare and contrast what Sean is saying now as far as kind of the way it's looking with the job search process versus those two times. Did you have anything during those two milestones that would compare to kind of what we're experiencing now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say during the housing crash, I luckily pivoted over to agency and pivoted over to like VMS, MSP contract roles.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a full-time job, but their 90% of their business was like VMS contract roles. So when companies are like cutting people and not hiring, they still need to hire a little bit on the side, but they're not going to bring in full-time recruiters. So what they do, they go out to an RPO or an MSP, and they get them to fill these couple roles. And that's what I did. So I went there in 2009 and stayed there for like 5 years. Was very successful at it. And then of course, once like the market started like getting like crazy, then like I went off and did my own business. So that wasn't as bad. I mean, I know some people were out of work for like a chunk of that time there, but it was definitely not. It was not as deep as what we're seeing now, and it didn't probably last as long. At least it didn't seem like it lasted that long to me. Whereas the .com bomb, that one was rough. That one, if you were in staffing and it was like 2002, like you probably weren't working.
Interesting. So it's more
I definitely
similar
wasn't working.
Right.
Yeah, and it was like it was like tough to get like work. So that was definitely but now the only thing that makes this different now is of course back then we didn't have as much in terms of like social media. We didn't have like a lot of eyeballs on screens as much as we do now. Everything is under a microscope and you can analyze every single piece of the data until you get sick. Now everything, if it looks bad, it looks really bad because you can see every little component in that chain. Whereas before, it was just, if you looked for a job, you're pretty much stuck with like, Monster or like Craigslist or word of mouth. So it was a little different then. Got it. Yeah. I mean, I think we're not out of this right now. I mean, I think maybe you might see like a small blip maybe in September. I mean, maybe not, that's a guess, but I think we're definitely looking at like 2024 as our comeback year.
Oh boy. All right, sorry for my diversion.
I agree.
So Sean, in terms of like actual like applying to the roles and like what you're seeing, what would you say about the types of roles that are out there that you see, and companies that are hiring? Because obviously tech and like software took a hit. So like what else do you go? Where else do you go?
I think the big names, right? I think the big names took a hit. I think, well, I mean, across the board, everybody took a hit. But I think from when you look at all of the roles that are available right now for jobs to apply to, which most people are utilizing LinkedIn to do, you know, again, maybe not diversifying their approach to looking at the job market as much as they could outside of LinkedIn. It's not the only place where people post jobs.
Right.
But I think what you're seeing is more of that startup, scale up, you know, disruptor sort of company, maybe in like the AI space or the Web3 space, or you're seeing companies that are mid-sized that don't really traditionally identify as tech forward companies that are looking at this as maybe an opportunity to revamp or bolster the way that we look at talent acquisition. We can bring some tech-minded recruiter folks that are used to really competitive environments in to maybe analyze how we do things here, or bring that big tech experience in-house here, and maybe we can really do something special when, you know, interest rates get better next year and things kind of turn around. So that's what you're seeing right now. I think a lot of people are looking at applications and they're like, I don't know who this company is, but they got a funny name, they got an interesting name. I'm going to go on LinkedIn and see how legit they are. What's their product? How many people work there? I'm applying, right? So I think that's what that looks like right now.
They're like, we have a software product for insurance brokers, but it has AI. And you're like,
yeah, that's right. Integrated AI. Yeah, that's a lot of what I'm seeing out there. And then outside of that, you'll see some larger companies that are posting. But when you see that, you know that the second that you've seen that available on LinkedIn, in my experience thus far since July, that means that they either A, are posting that role for compliance reasons because they had an internal transfer, or B, someone from that company said, hey, I know the best manager or director for this job who is on the market right now. They shouldn't be on the market right now. They would not be on the market right now. We need to create a rec so that we can bring this person in. And we need to bring them in now so they can get ramped up and they can make an impact later. So we're seeing that. And then also, if for some reason it's not resume farming, which is a lot of people are like speculating, like, oh, it's farming resumes. You know, you're number, what, 500 out of a bunch of U's out there in line. And number 500 in the inbox of the CEO, the CTO, the CIO, the VP of people saying, hi, like, you know, here's my resume, would love to be considered, you know, XYZ. So it's very competitive when you see a notable company getting headcount right now. You know, that's pretty much what it looks like.
It is. And I'd mentioned this before. I can't remember if I mentioned on the show or not, but like I had a friend who, like, they were in, I want to say like Iowa or like somewhere. They have, maybe not Iowa, maybe it was Kansas. So they had it was like insurance sales, and they needed to hire a sourcer, and they're like, I might need some help filling this role because, like, I've never hired one before. And so they posted on the weekend thinking, okay, I'm going to start having to work this role, next week. And so they posted it, and then over the weekend had to take it down because hundreds of people applying to it. They're like, I had to take it down. I have too many people. And it's not like just too many, like just randos like applying. It's like people from Microsoft, people from Meta, people from Amazon.
Grossly overqualified.
And he's like, why are
from a compensation perspective?
Yeah.
Right?
And he's like,
not even just the role.
Yeah. And so he was like, why are all these people from like these companies applying for this role? Don't they know what this is? And they do.
They do.
They do. So it's definitely crazy. We've done like some job tips in terms of like searching and stuff like that. You have to make do with what you have, but right now with what we have, it's some tough choices for sure.
And with tough choices comes, like we were talking about earlier before we jumped on this, is you're seeing people that pivot right now. Because you have to do what's best for you and your family and your career, right? A lot of people don't have the option or the want to sit around and wait for the market to get better. So I've seen peers, friends, people I don't know pivoting into software sales. I've even thought about it myself, honestly. Like, I have an older brother that's a phenomenal software salesman. I was like, maybe I could do that. Should I start over and do business development, for a software company? I've seen people on LinkedIn posting they're transitioning to real estate, which we talked about. It's like, honestly, there's a lot of similarities in all of those roles. So you're seeing people, if they're not potentially settling for, a third, half the compensation they were making at a Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn before, you're seeing them pivot out of this because it's a lot.
Yeah, and that's, or the other thing is starting your own business,
which we've also seen a ton of. Yeah. When I talked to my wife and said that I was going to start my own LLC just to see what was out there for freelancing, I think maybe LinkedIn heard me or was listening, because my feed was just new company after new company after new company being started. So many different talent agencies being born out of this, people being like, hey, if I get together with my peer here, we've got 20, 30 years of experience, we can do this. I don't need a company. We can go make our own.
That's right.
I imagine that would be interesting, though. I mean, because you got a lot of companies springing up in the talent acquisition space who are now establishing themselves as headhunters. Now, Mark, we've talked about headhunters in the past and kind of the perception of the job seekers on headhunters, but I've also found that a lot of these agencies are using that as a big selling item. We're made up of all the headhunters who have been in the business for a long time. And I'm thinking, okay, so that's not a good sell for me. I mean, headhunter to me means you kind of scrambled to find someone to listen to you and weasel your way into a, recruiting process. And I mean, I'm cynical. Okay. But so how do you differentiate yourself, Sean, with a situation like that? Have you seen that type of thing, or are you connected well enough to where you don't really have to deal with that kind of perception?
They just come to Sean and say, Sean,
yes,
please help us.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly what's happening. No. I would say, I mean, look, I personally have not actually taken the reins on my own LLC yet. I have former leaders that I worked with. I did agency for 5 years, and I've seen so many people successfully spin off of the agency life to create their own talent brands like that. And there is opportunity even outside of North America, right? People that you can freelance for. Recruiting is a special skill set, you can find people, right? Like Liam Neeson. Yeah. So it's like, you could do that in the UK. Why not, right? Willing to work early hours. But I guess what I'm saying is, when people are spinning off and they are spinning up their own headhunter agency, it is meditated, and it probably took a push for them to do something that they've been wanting to do for years. And this was their opportunity to do so. And it's folks that I've seen intimidating track records at great companies that are so impressively connected to leaderships within FANG companies, Fortune 50 companies, and the startup, scale up spinoffs from those. So they're definitely betting on themselves to be relevant in this market, and they're leveraging their relationships that are already in place. That's what you have to bank on. And then also, it's not in this market, when you're seeing companies being started like that, it's definitely not like, well, let's get out there and pick up the phone and call some people and see if they're hiring. You know what I mean? Because every company's tightening the belt, right? No one's like, oh, sure, yeah, let's just pay these headhunters this fee. We have tons of money to throw around for talent acquisition, as everybody knows. So they're framing up their services more as like, hey, how can we help you? What I've seen the terminology is right size your organization. We can work with you to potentially audit your talent acquisition process, or how your engineering teams are hiring, or what you guys are doing from a budget standpoint, and then work on that. I saw in you guys' last podcast, work on a retainer based fee, right? For maybe some high touch roles that you guys unfortunately don't have, butts and seats to really take care of right now. So
yeah, and also the when you go on business on your own, like from like a recruiting, your own recruiting agency, basically, you have like what you said, you have those relationships already set up. It's not like you're like one day like I'm going to be a headhunter and then you're just going to cold call every company, on the planet. Like you may get to that point, but you're going to set up your business and plant all those seeds with all of the people that you've had those relationships with before.
Yeah, before even launching the brand, right? Probably doing a lot of research to talk to people like, hey, if I go out and do this, you got me, right? So
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so I mean, there is something for that. So
right.
We are seeing a lot of people doing their own business thing. In terms of I guess the recruiters that are out there right now that still have jobs, what are you saying in terms of like kind of like how are they handling this? How are recruiters handling this market?
Honestly, it's sort of like I don't know what you're kind of I don't know what your cursing policy is on this podcast. But you're kind of
go right ahead if you'd like to.
I'm just saying you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know what I mean? Like they're like I'm talking to my peers, my friends that are still that are gainfully employed, maybe in like the finance industry, right? In tech. Or I'm talking to my friends that survived, the recruiter apocalypse and are still working for companies, the FANG companies, and it's still uncomfortable, right? Like I know a lot of these guys are sitting around doing a lot of what we were doing at the end of our tenure at Meta. They're doing a lot of team cross training. There's not a lot of recs right now, and every team meeting notification that pops up on their calendar, they kind of grip their desk a little bit like, is this it? Is the hammer about to drop? And I also know a lot of people they're still applying to other roles, at least, right? They're making sure that their resume is optimized using the latest ChatGPT technology, right? They want to make sure that they're relevant should the time come. They're being prepared. I think there's no real sense of safety at this point, but I will say, employed is definitely better than unemployed.
This is true. This is true.
Obvious statement of the day.
Yes. So in terms of the, so you said you have done some applications.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And how would you kind of rate, I guess, like the responses or the non-responses or any of the process stuff that you've seen for people who are applying?
Yeah, I can speak solely from my experience. I mean, I have built a recruiting career that went, as the years have gone on, it's gotten less generalist and more niche. I put myself in a FANG SRE org for, whatever you want to call it. And then I was like, I also want to recruit the top 1% of the software engineering industry. And you kind of define yourself in a very niche lane by doing that. Yeah. And I've been doing that for years now. And that was a career play for me. It's what I like doing. And it seemed like a very valuable skill set in recruiting. Now, when I'm applying to roles, from what I've seen out there, when you look at whether it's agency or in-house executive search or really tenured recruiters that are doing things like that, the numbers don't align or the years of experience don't align because people aren't looking to bring on, that sort of talent at the moment. What I am seeing, like I said, the type of companies that are hiring, and then you're seeing mid-level hires a lot across the board, and they're not looking for someone that is extremely specialized in one facet of the recruiting life cycle.
No, yeah, they want they don't general.
They absolutely need someone that can wear a lot of hats. They need someone that can take care of top of funnel. They can take care of the stakeholder management piece. They can do the project management piece. They can close candidates. They need the whole thing. So I think that's a good depiction of what's out in the market right now.
And manager level, maybe manage a couple of people, and then and then maybe pay you like 70 to 90K.
Yeah, 70K, 10 years of experience in management, master's degree, project management certification.
That would be it. Yeah. So obviously the like we said, it's an employer's market, so people can charge whatever they want. because they
Right.
can. So
Mhm.
that's how it's going to be until things pick up, and they've been picking up for a number of months in a row.
Yeah, and it's interesting to watch. I had somebody really like, it's really easy, right, to like zoom out and then get in panic mode, when you look at the whole situation. But if you think about it pragmatically, it was the summer that we were in, right? And it was kind of the hangover from all the layoffs, and the layoffs have been thinning out, right? You saw it on LinkedIn, it was trending like less layoffs over the summer, right? It's kind of leveling out, and I think, Mark, you told me back in May, right? You predicted it would start maybe picking up sometime around now.
Yeah.
Mid-August, maybe September, it would pick up. There'd be a little spike in activity. 2024 year was going to be, was going to be the great comeback. But for me personally, in my experience, I've applied. I mean, I don't even mind. I think from what I've seen on LinkedIn posts, my number is really conservative, but I mean, about 40, 45 roles I've strategically applied to. All of them within IC, an individual contributor role or like a lead role, some management, because I do have experience, leading people. But I do not mind saying, because I think people should hear it, like I have gotten 0 interviews based on those applications. Yeah. And I've gotten 0 interviews. I have gotten 15 rejection emails. So not even hearing back from some of them. And
well, they were nice enough to send an automated rejection, though.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that really helped me when I started to freak out, right, when I was like, oh man, this is way worse than I thought it was, because I'll be the first to line up and bag on myself and say I'm not worth my salt, right? But I was a little bit concerned about that. I was like, really, like not even like a recruiter call, like nothing, like an intro call, and then ghost me after. No one's swiping right. So I was like, okay, this is concerning. And obviously I'm pretty busy with my newborn at home, and we have the 3-year-old, which is a handful too. So it's not like I can just kind of do a 9-to-5 full-time job search right now. I have to be really calculated about the way I spend my time. But I mean, I really started taking the approach and the advice that I was hearing, like, if you're going to apply to a role, you need to be prepared to send a targeted message to that hiring group or someone that that knows that hiring group, and be prepared to pitch yourself in order to get some response. And I think that was when it really opened up to me, like, Sean, maybe take off your, tech bubble, whatever, like explosion hat where I'm like panicking, and start thinking about this like a recruiter. Like start thinking about, how do you reverse engineer your funnel? You need a job, and you need to start looking at, how do I optimize my ability to find the right job? Well, maybe stop looking strictly at LinkedIn.
Right.
And start utilizing other methods, right? So one of the people that I messaged at the company, he actually said, hey, I know it's tough out there. Before I found this job in recruiting leadership, I built a custom search engine on Google for jobs.
Wow.
And he just sent it to me. And it was so cool, because I was like, you know what, Sean, maybe you should start networking. And so I sort of put on my recruiter hat, and I looked at my network that I built for 8.5 years, and I stopped strictly just applying and praying. And I built a Boolean string in my own network on LinkedIn, and I started messaging every lead, manager, senior manager, VP, director, both on the talent acquisition side and engineering, to not say, hey, here's my resume, I need a job. I was like, hey, I haven't caught up with you in a while. How are you? How are things with you? Because we're all in this together and experiencing it. And I started lining up conversations. And that was the most important thing that I could have done to kick off my job search properly. And what I would suggest everybody do is to stop applying and praying, and then being the 500th message to the VP of recruiting at that company, and just tap into your network and have some human conversations with people, because you're going to find some really interesting leads there that were not posted online.
Yep. There it is. There's the mic drop from Sean.
The back door in. Hey, I'm curious, just for my own edification here. In your field, are you seeing that there is a move also toward an RTO, or is it still kind of decentralized, work from home or hybrid? I mean, are you seeing that recruiters are pushing for that RTO, and that's kind of a determinant in whether you move forward in a process, even though you haven't had any conversations yet?
I know that I am. I'm definitely seeing that, right? I actually had my first conversation with an R4R recruiter that was referred to me for a former colleague. Nice, always nice to have somebody on your side, right? We always spend so much time recruiting ourselves, but like have someone that's also working for you and helping you out. But for the most part, from what I've seen here locally in Austin, most companies that are hiring in-house recruiters want either flex in office 3 days a week, or there are some that are like no remote. Because when you post a job right now in this seller's market, with the amount of candidates there are out there, you post a remote open job, you just accepted applications from the entirety of North America.
Exactly.
So, and you want to talk about hiring managers are overwhelmed too, right? We as candidates are overwhelmed, but hiring managers are also overwhelmed. They look at the amount of applicants that they have to go through to even find the right person. That's overwhelming in itself. So yes, I am seeing, given that it's a bit of a seller's market for employers, there are a lot of them being like, hey, I do want some in office. But I'm seeing like recruiters, I see these applicants out there, they're standing their ground, they're trying to fight the man a little bit and be like, look, man, I've been doing this remote since 2020. And honestly, we did a heck of a job. So I'm going to stand my ground. I've already got my home office set up. So I'm seeing people fight back a little bit for flexibility, at least.
It's interesting. I mean, I had a couple of experiences in the last few days where I had a recruiter, they put a remote job up and it looked cool. They didn't put the salary range. So I'm assuming they're not in California. They weren't. And the interesting thing was, he said, hey, you've got a really great resume. We'd love to talk with you, but let's talk about the salary through email. Let's talk about the salary. And he says, we're capped out at this. And I went, well, a little bit low. Can you meet me at this? And it was maybe $8,000 more, nothing. And he said, no, I'm hard capped. And so what it turned out is that's how he's getting rid of candidates. So even though it says remote, he's getting rid of California, New York, Boston, major Met candidates by just having that initial conversation. So yeah, they've got a big pool that they can draw from, but that's how they're slimming down their candidate pool.
Such a great point.
What a pain in the butt, though.
It is. I mean, the second that I see on an application from LinkedIn, it always ports you over to some other ATS, right? So it's like Greenhouse or one of the other ones. Yeah. And the second that I see in the application is like, what are your compensation expectations? And I'm just like, oh.
You just put one.
I just type it in and, hope that it's not too much. And sure enough, maybe that's why I'm getting ghosted.
That's why you put one or negotiable if they allow alphanumeric.
I mean,
one thing too about the rates, and Sean, you know this very well. For the recruiters, sometimes those rates are completely and utterly out of their control, and not even like their manager could do anything about it. Right? Those are decisions that are made by corporate, made by finance. In conjunction maybe with HR, but really like they set the budget, and depending on the company that you're at, you have absolutely no say in it. Like even if it's like, we could get this great candidate, like no, we can only pay up to here, and then that's the end of that conversation. So it's like, as a recruiter, you wish you could get the best candidate, but you only have so much to play with, so you can't get them.
It's a part of the qualification and vetting process, unfortunately,
That's right. Which is why, a smaller company won't be able to land like, a director of product management from Meta, because they're not going to be able to pay them what that person is going to make. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is right now. It's the way it is, man.
But I think it kind of begs the question for me, though. I mean, a lot of these companies and even former product managers from companies like Meta and LinkedIn, they're taking these lesser jobs and you know, because they've got the credentials and the pedigree. The only issue is going to be that when that job market finally opens up again, there's going to be a deluge.
Once everyone like kind of like takes their jobs, then all of a sudden the people who just took a job because it was like a downtime, then they're out, they're gone.
And that's the message to the people that are super overqualified, right, for these roles. Like if you see like an IC role, it's like a senior technical recruiter role for like a good mid-sized company that's like tech forward, be like, oh man, like 8 years of experience. There's so many of us out there that meet that qualification. We're like, finally, they're going to have a great salary, great benefits, great product. This is me typing my application, by the way. And you're like doing that. And then you go and you looked at the LinkedIn analytics on who the applicants were, because you're like, oh, I'm like a top applicant for this. It says you go and you look, and it's like we talked about earlier, you're seeing director level candidates applying for that role who are grossly overqualified and probably haven't done the IC role in 5 years alone, right?
Yes.
And their argument is like, I could do that all day in my sleep. I can do that job. But the problem for an employer, the risk of taking on someone, who doesn't want a director with a master's degree to come in and do that role? Sure, that sounds great. But the problem that you get with that is, the second that the market turns around, and it will, they're out of here, right? They're not going to stick around for that. So that's the inherent risk there for employers.
Yep, that's true. So I think we kind of like covered like a lot of like what we're saying. I guess, Sean, any kind of like final thoughts on the networking advice was good. I mean, that's something that we've talked about on the show before, so that one people should take to heart and follow. But any other like kind of like parting thoughts on navigating this job market?
Stay patient. And definitely network with everybody that network and check in on your friends that you worked with on your old team to make sure that they're getting jobs, how they're doing. And outside of that too, like this is a lot of stress on all of us, and everybody has their own lives and things they're dealing with. So don't just reach out to people just to see if they can get you a job. Like check in on your friends, check in on your former colleagues. And when you do, like, network with people, because you're going to get some really interesting insights that you're not going to see trending on LinkedIn or Twitter, or X as we call it now, I guess. I've heard some incredible eye-opening things, from former leaders that I've reached out to for advice when I was trying to figure out what direction I want to go during this time. And you get insights, right? If you reach out, so advice. Reach out to your IC friends because they're going to be having a similar experience to you, but reach out to your leadership, mentors, people that you've worked in the past, because they have a different lens that they're looking at this from.
Right.
And the experience that they're having in leadership right now, and how their organizations are handling this. I reached out to a former VP of mine, and he had let me know that, the job application process is overwhelming for employers right now too. Not only is it expensive from a time standpoint and a monetary standpoint to post jobs and then go through all those applicants, it's a lot of work, but they're actually just as overwhelmed. They're like, look, I need to find a couple of contract recruiters. There's no way that I can vet 800 people if I post this. And so they will go to their leadership meetup groups or their email chains that they have in their organizations and say, does anybody have someone to refer? So just network with people, and someone is going to send you a really cool insight, like, hey, when I just got this job, I used X website that you didn't know about, right? It's a different avenue to look at things. Or network with former leadership, because they're going to have leads for you and help you get through it. People want to help people get jobs.
Right.
It's just innately how we are. So that's my best advice is, yes, you have to apply to jobs. It's an unfortunate reality of the market right now, but network with people, because it's going to be more fruitful, both for your mental and emotional, to have real conversations with real people. You're going to feel like you're getting somewhere, and you might just have a nice, encouraging conversation that day, but you also might find your next job doing that.
There you go.
Sage advice.
Real truth, real talk from Sean Patterson. What's up?
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Well, that just about wraps up our show today. We want to thank everyone for joining us, and we will see y'all next time on The Recruiter of Oz. Goodbye.
Goodbye.